agribusiness, Richard Ogundele, joins me from our Abuja studios. Many thanks for your time, Mr. Ogundele. Yes, agriculture.
Thank you very much for having me.
Agriculture, we all know, is an important sector of the Nigerian economy. Just as I said earlier, it contributes around 20.85% to the GDP. Now we have recent events, or not so recent events, of climate change. We know we used to have the issues of the herders and the farmers clashes. But that aside, let's focus on the climate change. In your assessment, how much so has it affected agriculture in Nigeria?
Thank you very much. And once again, Happy New Year to viewers at home and everybody. Climate change is a global phenomenon. In Nigeria, we're experiencing earlier rains, shorter period, heavier rainfalls, and it means farmers really need a lot more information to plan their activities on a yearly basis. To support them in doing this, we will need more accurate data, and this is where NIMET comes into play. Yearly, NIMET releases information regarding the rainfall pattern for the year that is expected, and using this projected forecast, everyone is expected to plan their agricultural activities accordingly. Right now, we have a situation where Nigerian agriculture, being more of a rain-fed type, is really suffering from the effect of climate change. Since everybody waits for the rains and we're not making use of irrigation to grow our crops in the dry season, we are really badly hit. A clear effect of this is the farmers and herdsmen clashes. Up north, where you used to have a lot more grass for them, clearly defined grazing routes, and the Lake Chad Basin itself has been depleted, reduced significantly for a long time, at least about 50% of that. So definitely the herdsmen have to go out, down south, but along those known grazing routes to them, houses have sprung up, industries, farms, and a lot more mixed uses of those grazing reserves. Now, if we consider the fact that they only know those routes and everything on that route is now considered an obstacle, there's bound to be some clashes. If we think of rice, for example, 72% of rice produced in Nigeria comes from the Northwest region. And that is the region that received a lot of the flooding event in 2018. Earlier in the year 2018, we were aware of the heavy floods across the country. And if we listen to traders in Lagos, in Port Harcourt, in Abuja, they will tell you that things are expensive, the crops are expensive, and even consumers who go to the farms, who go to the markets, they're still complaining that they're finding it difficult to buy some farm produce. This is an aftermath of the effect of the flooding. All crops will be affected along the path of the floods, and definitely the harvest will be reduced.
Yes, let me come in here, Mr. Ogundele. As you rightly said, data is very important when it comes to the issues of climate change that we are experiencing now. And if NIMET is giving out the data on how to manage how farmers can produce, but is it that the government is very oblivious of this data made available by NIMET?
No, the government is not oblivious of it, but agriculture is private, is largely a private sector driven business. So NIMET, being a government agency, is providing data for the private businesses to be aware of what is being forecasted for the year. Therefore, anyone who is serious about agriculture should take those data provided seriously, plan their land preparation, nursery development, transplanting, and the rest of them to ensure that they beat whatever negative impact that forecasted weather will have on the cropping season. Now, if we rely so much on rain-fed agriculture, which we do in Nigeria, we will continue to have this. It means we need to explore more of irrigation farming in the dry season that we are in right now to make up for the shortfall of the wet season period. It's even good we have NIMET giving us data, but how well do we understand the data? How much use do we put the data into? And again, we also need to be sure that those who ought to make use of the data, the farmers in particular, have access to it. Extension Delivery Service is supposed to take this to the farmers and guide them in their operations. But as we all know in Nigeria, Extension is in a comatose state. We need to revive it seriously so that the farmers can get the information as at when needed and therefore plan their activities.
Yes, Mr. Ogundele, 80% of Nigerians purchase farm products on the market. And from some of the voice of the people as we went out, what we were able to get from them is that the weather is affecting most of their crop. You are an experienced agribusiness person or personality. Now, you talked about understanding the data from NIMET. How do you understand this data so well that you apply it to your farm produce and how to keep them better or how to adjust to climate change?
Thank you. This is a function of your handling practices from the farm to your aggregation center and ultimately to how it gets to the market. Your handling, storage, packaging, transportation, and delivery to the market are very important. This is the basics of global agricultural practices, which we refer to as GAP, good agricultural practices. So apart from the issue of the weather and the climate, Nigerian farmers still need to be taught how to handle their produce properly, package them, store them, and transport them. Now, this is where different segments of agribusiness value chain comes into play. If you do not handle properly, of course, you expose the crops to the harsh weather. There will be effect on the vegetables, for instance. They get dry, they get brittle, and they start breaking off, and they lose all the value in it. They don't look fresh anymore. Storage is a key issue here. So if we don't have proper storage where it's required, perhaps cold chain storage, you can't maintain that freshness. If you don't have good roads, the vehicles moving the produce from point A to point B can't do that in good time. If the farmers who produce don't know how to sort, wash, grade, clean, pack, and load properly, definitely you have a lot of wastages from that point, and the climate will just add to it. Climate makes its own effect more at the production stage, where a lot more insurance-prone system has to come into play. If we understand the forecast for the year, then we can tell how best to plan our cropping, ensure that we have insurance to at least indemnify people where we have a disaster if it's inevitable, but at least that's part of what we are missing in this country. It's gradually catching on, but we still need to do a lot more about that.
Yes, I'm glad you talked about data from NIMET in managing agricultural produce or production. Looking ahead 2019, where do you see agriculture in Nigeria?
First and foremost, agriculture is really a strong contributor to the GDP at almost 29% mentioned. We have good policies in place like the Green Alternative, the REGP, and of course the AFSNS, which is the Agriculture and Food Security and Nutrition document. Now, if we put these policies into place by implementing them as best as we ought to, then we will begin to get the results expected from those policy documents. Our challenge in Nigeria is that we don't implement very well, but we have good policies on paper. The other thing we need to deal with is our borders. If we don't have a system of ensuring that our borders are well policed and managed, these policies will be struggling because local production will still be hampered by the easy importation of goods into the country at much cheaper prices. I will expect that from the recently submitted budget to the National Assembly by the President, if the capital projects mentioned in there are continued, perhaps we could really see some boosts in agriculture, and those will contribute to more growth of the economy.
So, albeit your projection for 2019, what do you think would be the contribution of GDP from 29% as we have it now? What do you think it will be in 2019?
I think it's very much better to just maintain what we have now at that 28.5. If by any stroke of luck we increase that, that's fine, but I will still maintain this rate for the next 2-3 years, because we still have a lot of importation going on. We still have challenges with our local production. We still have that aspect of competitiveness, which we are struggling to catch up with as a nation. Our export side of things is struggling. Our port is not functioning very well. We still have that congestion. It takes more than forever to clear goods from the port. We don't have the facilities to hold fresh produce that can go out of the country, and that means we are actually in a cul-de-sac. So we need to just maintain our pace, strengthen where we are, and hopefully over the next 2-3 years we can come out of it.
All
but
right.
With
all right,
just one last thing.
Okay, go ahead.
If we don't address the farmer-herdsmen clashes issue, more farmers will leave the farms, produce coming out will reduce, the price will continue to increase, and consumers will keep complaining. So we need to do something about it. And the crux of that matter is actually climate change.
All right, we'll leave it at that. Mr. Richard Ogundele, the Managing Director, Agribusiness. Thank you so much for your insight and analysis on the issue of climate change affecting agribusiness in Nigeria.
Thank you.